And now it's time for one of our regular series of interviews, and I'm delighted to be joined here in the interview hot seat by Mr. Monro Walters. Now, Monro, of course, is a familiar voice to Llanelli Talking newspaper listeners because he's one of our newsreaders. Welcome, Monro.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for the invite.
It's strange, I suppose, to find yourself in the hot seat being interviewed for a change.
Yes, it's not a common occurrence, but a pleasure nonetheless.
Good. There's a lot more to Monro Walters than just reading the news on the Llanelli Talking newspaper for the blind. And I suppose quite a few people would know that you're also the public address announcer at Parker Scarlets for the Llanelli Scarlets rugby region.
Yes, indeed. And before that, at Straddy Park in the good old days, way back. But having said that, it's the good old days now coming back to rugby and to the Scarlets, the brand new stadium. And it is a wonderful place to work and a smashing stadium to work in.
Broadcasting and your voice goes out to so many people on a Saturday during a rugby game. I mean, do you get stopped in town? People recognise, we know that voice, or?
It's, yes, I do, I suppose. Many people in town know me. We talk about rugby, or they stop me but talk about something entirely different, like most recently Nigel Davis departing and going to Gloucester. But I have had instances when I've been working a few years ago. I was on the other side of Carmarthen, I won't say where, and I was in a call, and this gentleman said, I know that voice, and of course, despite, of course, he's a Scarlet season ticket holder, and this was Straddy Park days, of course,
yeah.
And so we talked a fair amount on about rugby and about the Scarlets, but I've had a few instances of that, yeah, which is very nice.
Yeah, so it's very good.
Very, very nice indeed.
Yeah. So tell me, where does Monro Walters come from then?
Initially Furness, grew up in Furness, the good little village in Straddy Road. Moved then with changes in the family, death of grandparents and so on, moved to Headley Terrace. Went to Carmarthen Grammar School, as a load of Llanelli boys did in those days, about 20, 25 of us, all by train, wonderful times. I won't say more than that. On to college and then into teaching, taught in Lincoln and in Leicester. A secondary school in Lincoln and a really top-class grammar school in Leicester. I was very, very fortunate indeed.
So you were one of the Welsh teaching experts, were you?
Yes, just like Cole of many decades ago.
Yeah.
More recently, possibly the teachers and the exodus of teachers seems to have dried up, just like the coldness has dried up.
Right.
I'm not sure if that is the case, but I mean, wherever I went in teaching, and always involved rugby, taking a rugby side, when I was in Leicester, for example, we played rugby against Northampton Grammar School, Nottingham High School, Sutton Coldfield Grammar and so on, Henry VIII Grammar School, Coventry. There's always some Welshman lurking in the background.
Coaching players.
Coaching it. Yeah. There's one actually in Bablick, is a semi-public school in Coventry.
Yeah. And
a guy got on very well there, have seeing him season after season. But his name was Ron Jones, and he had about 4 caps for Wales from Coventry, all in one season in those days.
Yeah.
And we got on, wonderful guy, I think from the Rhondda somewhere. And he had a wonderful sense of humour. We got on like a house on fire. Yes, you find a Welshman nearly everywhere. Yeah. Whether that is the case nowadays, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So after exploits in England, what happened then?
Yes, I came back to work with the Western Mail in Cardiff. Everything happened, as it seems to in life, very quickly, and everything happened at the same time. My wife Maxine was expecting our first baby. It was born in Leicester Royal Infirmary, but I was working. I then had to go down to the Western Mail and working from home in Llanelli, and called one day, quick, the baby's due. So driving back to the Midlands, the baby arrived that night, and I had to then go back to work on the Monday, go back to Leicester the following weekend, and so on and so on. And that lasted for about 3-4 weeks, and then we had this house in Wales, and we've been here ever since. But yes, working for the Western Mail through the medium of advertising, or selling advertising space, which is a wonderful medium, but it was very enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it was hard. I get no two ways about that.
Yeah, and from advertising then, did you progress anywhere else from the Western Mail?
Yes, I went for 3 years, after about 10 years or so with the Western Mail, and you do experience a bit of burnout because you're on target every month, and you have to have new ideas constantly. and you just sort of run out of ideas, basically. I moved on then to Rank Hovis, spent about 3 years there, and then after 3 years in Ranks, I had my own business, back into the publishing and advertising world, which was very good. And Morris had contracts with police authorities, local authorities, sports clubs, and so on and so on.
I suppose you mentioned rugby earlier on. Rugby is one of the passions of your life?
All sport is. Having been a PE teacher, I had to indulge a bit of everything. But yes, you can't deny rugby was the main factor. Thoroughly enjoyed it, followed it while I was a child, going to the gang of boys and the Tanner Bank at Straddy when you were in not only school days, but I mean after school days. And then, of course, the development of the ground and so on. Yes, rugby has been a main factor. And it's amazing to see how it has changed over the last couple of decades compared to what it was, quite sedentary, if you like, for many, many years before then. But it's been a violent change in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, since it's gone professional.
Yeah,
and
very much.
Yeah. There's a family link with Straddy Park.
Yes, Glyn, my father, he was in the public address for many, many years, well over 20 years, I think. He started in the Carwyn James era. And it was Carwyn who invited him to come on the pier, take the pier at Straddy Park. So you're talking, I was away in Lincoln at that time. So I wasn't on hand to experience it firsthand, as it were, just holidays. But yeah, Carwyn invited him in 68, I think it was. And then, of course, you saw the good times and the cup-winning glories and all that, which I shared when I came home from Leicester and so on. But, of course, during the centenary year, he was also made secretary of the centenary year. So he was involved in getting choirs to sing at the ground and the organisation of the banquet and the pitch, or helped in that score anyway, and so on and so on.
Yeah. So he was there then on that famous 9-3 day, was he?
Yes, he was, and he tempted me with a ticket, and to be honest, looking back, I should have gone, but I was but the only person in the whole of Wales not to be at Straddy Park that day.
Well, I share that with you, actually.
Well, there's two of us. Because everybody says they were there, but I wasn't. But, I mean, the ground must have held about 100,000.
If everybody who says they were there, then it must be 100,000 people there. But I wrote an honest piece for the Scarlets programme a few years back, which I declared I wasn't there. And I recounted the story of how I had the opportunity to go, but I didn't go because I was working on that particular afternoon. But
well, yes, I had the chance during the last week of the closure of Straddy Park. Roy Noble had a programme on his afternoon show, and I was asked to pre-record, did a week or so before. And my piece went out apparently on the Wednesday. Apparently, I remember listening to it in the car. On the Wednesday of the final week before the Bristol game. And I declared then in that interview with the lady concerned, the researcher, that I was one of the few people not to be there. But for some reason, they cut it out. Yeah, shame about that.
So your father, public address announcer at Straddy Park, and then you took over.
Yes. He became very ill towards the latter part of his life and declined very quickly. I think his last game was Cardiff in the January, and he was in a lot of discomfort. And he didn't go back after that. He died in the March of that season of 1995. Somebody else then saw the PA through, and I never thought more about it. I just get on with my life and get on the business again. But I was persuaded by many people to apply for the job during the summer period. As a build-up to the new season in September. I just poo-pooed the idea, but my wife convinced me, and she said, look, you should do so because you sound like your father, which obviously you cannot tell that, but apparently it did, and I do. So I applied, and I think as the only person to apply, to be honest, nobody has bothered. I was told there was an advertisement in the Llanelli Star or the Evening Post, or both, but as far as I know, I was the only fool to apply, and I've been doing it ever since.
You were one of the assets that they brought with them when they left Straddy Park and went to Park of Scarlets.
Well, nice of you to say so. Thank you very much. Yes, it's of course it's a double act now. How things have changed, not only on the playing field, but off the field as well. Because there's a guy there now called Tomo, of course, who's a disc jockey with local radio. He and I do a double act, and if you can call it that. and it's now settled down to him doing the home team, i.e. the Scarlets, introducing them onto the field and calling the teams out and link them with the screen, and I do the away team. Now, this seemed to start with the fact that, and I'm sticking by the story, you don't matter what anybody says, when it came to Heineken Cup time and we had the French sides down, or even some English sides with a whole host of South Pacific Islanders, Tomo had great difficulty
pronouncing the
names. But well, I think I just had a beating him there, so I stuck with that. Anyway, because of it, I do the away team now.
Yeah, Parker Scarlets isn't the only ground which has your PA announcing skills. You're also at Stebben Heath for Llanelli Reds.
I'm on, yes, at Stebo for the Reds, and yes, pity the crowds aren't back for that, but hopefully that will change in due course. Yes, I thoroughly enjoy it. It's whereas you speak to people between 7, 8, 9, sometimes 12,000 people at Parker Scarlets, which is thoroughly enjoyable, but it definitely keeps you on your toes, and you're going to watch your P's and Q's. But at Stebben Heath, still got to watch your P's and Q's and be professional, but I mean, there isn't a fraction of that amount there.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. You think of the good old days when my father talked about the Jockstein era at Stebben Heath in the 50s, and there were quite a few thousand at Stebben Heath.
And those fans seem to have disappeared, never to come back.
Yes, I'm afraid so,
yeah. You mentioned about the 12,000 at Parker Scarlets. You've spoken to a lot more at the Millennium Stadium.
Yes, very fortunate indeed. That's where Rupert Moon came in many years ago. He was then involved not at the Scarlets but working for the Millennium Stadium, and he had to find somebody to do the PA because the regular person had been called away to, I think he was an actor, I think he was involved with Pobl Cum, and they had filming that particular weekend or whatever the excuse was. But he immediately thought of me, gave me a ring, and I did the game, which is, one game was against Wales against Romania, and 2 weeks later I came back to do Wales Japan. That was 2005, I think. And then more recently, which is wonderful, I was called again, this time to do, was it November 2010, and I did the Wales-South Africa, then the Wales-New Zealand game at the Millennium Stadium, and it was a wonderful occasion. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. I go back there tomorrow.
Great.
But I mean, I think the two are there are the ones that are ensconced.
But it's nice to get those international caps as an announcer.
And that's what they kept saying at Stradey Park, then Parker Scarlets. You've got your international caps for November, the Nationals, now for the home nations. But I'm afraid that never materialised. But you never know. We live in hope.
It could still come in the future.
You never know.
Monro, it's been lovely talking to you, and I'm sure we could talk for hours about sport, and perhaps we will catch up again on local sport in a future interview. But for now, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Rob. Diolch yn fawr i chi.
Diolch.